This is why the Philippines military is scaring China in this South China Sea face-off.
China has been encroaching upon Philippine territory in the South China Sea for years. For the most part, the country didn't face a lot of resistance, which isn't surprising given its economic and military might, and in particular, its large navy. Simply put, it takes immense courage to stand up to China.
And they have done so. On top of that, they've been harassing Philippine fishermen consistently, by the way. I feel like no matter how many times I bring that up, it still irks me the same way because these are just people doing their jobs. And they just decided to also try to hit one of them and accidentally hit one of their own. Oopsies. We know that was karma. There you go.
But recently, the Philippines has shown that sort of defiance as well, demonstrating remarkable bravery in the face of such overwhelming power.
Yeah.
It's a tale as old as time. David versus Goliath. But Goliath was overconfident when facing off against David, mocking him with bravado. China, on the other hand, seems to fear its David, who looks determined to stand his ground, come what may. But it hasn't always been the case. The Philippines was wary of making any bold declarations, feeling mercilessly bullied by China. So what's changed? Why is a small island nation suddenly scaring a global military powerhouse? Keep watching to find out. Now, of course, we can't discuss how the situation in the South China Sea changed without first explaining the dynamics in the region. To the surprise of no one, China is the primary source of virtually all tensions in the South China Sea. Or to be more precise, China's sweeping claims of sovereignty over almost all of the 1.4 million square miles of this crucial waterway is the point of contention. Naturally, these brazen claims of indisputable sovereignty have put China at odds with other countries in the region, which all assert ownership of the island's reefs and undersea resources in the South China Sea, including the 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas and 11 billion barrels of untapped oil.
That's going on too.
The countries with the competing claims are Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, and of course, the Philippines. China has responded to these competing claims by essentially trying to militarize the South China Sea, constructing artificial bases armed with anti-ship and anti-aircraft missile systems, fighter jets, and jamming equipment. The country's aggressive stance and unyielding commitment to these military bases have escalated tensions in the region, drawing international condemnation. They've practically turned the South China Sea into one of the most contested regions in the world and a flashpoint for global conflagration. And yet the Philippines seems to be the only nation in the region willing to openly and continuously confront China's territorial ambitions and military buildup. The confrontation in question has led to a series of naval run-ins, primarily focused around two flashpoints, the Second Thomas Shoal and the Scarborough Shoal. The Second Thomas Shoal, also known as the Ayungin Shoal, is an 11 nautical mile long teardrop-shaped submerged reef located in the Spratly Islands of the South China Sea, less than 200 nautical miles west of Palawan, the largest province in the Philippines. Although this territory is claimed by multiple nations, the Philippines is the only one to maintain a military presence in the Second Thomas Shoal. However, to be honest, the term military presence might be overselling it a bit. The presence in question is less than a dozen Philippine Navy Marines stationed on a 330-foot-long LST-542 class tank landing ship called the Sierra Madre.
And just to emphasize, I'm pretty sure even now there is more warships that were gifted, I think, from Japan and as well the U.S. now kind of coming in. And I don't know if it's for particularly this area, but I do know that it was gifted to them for even more help, for potentially more protection as well. And I think it's happening because they know that the Philippines will stand their ground, and they have been. And they know that in terms of the treaty that I'm pretty sure they have, they are, enforced to kind of help them. But not just that. They are able to. They don't really have to do anything right now, but they want to because they see them standing up to China, especially with this situation, considering that they're not even supposed to be doing that. So they are really just standing up instead of just accepting it.
The ship was originally built for the US Navy during World War II and transferred to the Philippines after the Vietnam War. But how did the Sierra Madre make it onto the Second Thomas Shoal, virtually becoming a makeshift military base? Actually, the Philippine Navy left it there on purpose. It deliberately ran the ship aground on the Second Thomas Shoal in 1999 in order to assert sovereignty over the area and maintain a continuous military presence. And that's precisely what it's done for the last 25 years. Of course, the years also took a toll on the ship itself, which now resembles a rusty shipwreck straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. but the Sierra Madre, with all its rust and holes, is still very much an actively commissioned ship in the Philippine Navy's roster. So any assault on the Sierra Madre would be classified as an act of war. Talk about Philippine ingenuity. Thanks to the Sierra Madre, China can't blockade the second Thomas Shoal, which it had attempted on multiple occasions. Besides the obvious sovereignty aspect, the reef is also highly desirable for its lucrative fishing grounds and access to the nearby reed bank, packed with oil and natural gas reserves.
And there's so many ships that go through there that, the Philippines kind of controls. So knowing that China wants to take part of that kind of just spells this greed aspect of why do you want more consistently? And I feel like China's already a big ground of possibly the highest economic place, one of the biggest economic places, and they still want more. I feel like it's always got to be one of those pissing battles with them, especially. I don't understand why it has to be that way, but that's the thing, is it doesn't matter because the Philippines is not allowing it to just happen, which I feel like is the strongest, most beautiful part.
The second notable flashpoint in the South China Sea, the Scarborough Shoal, is also teeming with fish. In fact, this 58-square-mile atoll is a traditional fishing ground for Filipino fishermen.
This is where they got harassed.
Of course, the shoal's abundant fisheries aren't the only reason for the maritime standoff that's been going on for 12 years. The Scarborough Shoal is also strategically significant due to its location, making it a fantastic air and naval base. The nation that holds the Scarborough Shoal could potentially control the maritime traffic in the South China Sea. If this nation were China, the reefs of the Scarborough Shoal would be demolished, delicate corals ground up, and the debris used to build artificial land masses to host massive missile sites, naval piers, and radar installations for its armed forces. That's the fate that befell other reefs and shoals in the South China Sea under Chinese control. However, the Philippines isn't allowing the same to happen to this shoal, which lies within the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, some 130 miles west of Luzon, the country's biggest island. That's why the Philippine vessels around the shoal always stand their ground, despite China's many attempts to intimidate them. Speaking of intimidation, China has been trying to assert its dominance through aggressive maneuvers against Philippine vessels for years.
Especially
Ever
fishermen.
Since the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, Netherlands, ruled that China's territorial claims in the South China Sea were legally invalid, the country has seemingly taken an alternative approach, choosing brute force over diplomacy.
That's the worst part. It's when you get rid of the law, everyone just becomes animals. I've stated this countless times, and it's countlessly shown that they don't care. They literally do not care. It's already been proven that it is legally invalid. And they are like, okay, well, in that case, I'm still going to do it anyways. Why, man?
These displays of force have intensified in the last few years, undoubtedly escalating in the summer of 2024. So much so that the retired Filipino naval officer and former Senator Antonio Trillanes described the current relations between China and the Philippines as the worst in recent memory, while Teresita Ang-si, a Filipino civic leader and activist, said these relations are at their lowest ebb and on the brink of total breakdown. With this in mind, let's do a quick rundown of the major naval run-ins that have brought the relations between China and the Philippines to a boiling point. The summer of 2023 was when things first started warming up between the two nations. In August 2023, the China Coast Guard, or CCG, fired water cannons at Filipino Coast Guard, or PCG, ships in the South China Sea. Chinese ships also performed dangerous maneuvers around the PCG vessels, which were escorting supply ships en route to the second Thomas Shoal. In September, the PCG removed a 980-foot-long floating barrier installed to block the entrance to the lagoon at the Scarborough Shoal, leaving over 50 Philippine fishing boats outside the shoal. In October, a CCG ship and its accompanying vessel rammed a PCG ship and a military-run supply boat off the second Thomas Shoal, damaging both.
And this is what really angers me. It could have literally harmed them, like literally hurt these workers. And I think that's the thing that also irks me, is the fact that it could have injured potential people who are just trying to put the food on the table. Like, how does that not anger you as well? I think that's the most angering part, is just that. These are just simple people trying to work who just want to make a living, and then you just attack them, fire cannons at them, and you could kill them. And you just choose to do this just because, you know, you already know that you're not legally in bounds to do this, so you're just going to harass now.
In November, China once again blasted a Philippine supply ship heading to the second Thomas Shoal with
Again.
water cannons. In December, the CCG did the same, but this time, General Romeo Brawner Jr., the head of the 150,000-member-strong Philippine Armed Forces, was aboard the vessel that got bumped. Brawner joined the crew on the Unisa May 1, a small wooden-hulled supply boat, to personally deliver Christmas gifts, food, and other necessities.
Really, dude? Really, dude? Like, you see? Really? Personally deliver Christmas gifts, food, and other necessary supplies. Oh my gosh. That got me mad.
Necessary supplies to the Filipino Marines stationed aboard BRP Sierra Madre. Having experienced China's aggression in the South China Sea firsthand, Brawner vowed that the nation would continue supporting its frontline troops and protecting fishermen at all costs.
Yes, thank you.
Water cannon attacks continued throughout 2024. On March 5th, the CCG blasted a supply boat with these powerful devices, shattering its windshield and injuring 4 Filipino crew members.
I was saying this. These cannons are not nothing to play with. Like, someone may look at this on camera and think, oh, it's just a little goofy water. They're just, being annoying. Move on. Absolutely not. These cannons can hurt you. These cannons are so powerful. It's similar or even stronger, similar or stronger than the firefighter ones. That could literally launch you, like throw you if it hits you. It feels like, I don't know if you guys have ever had water pressure in the shower be so strong, it kind of feels like you're getting like poked and stabbed. Imagine one that is on a ship that firefighters would use to put out fires. That kind of strength aimed at you. That could literally throw you. How bad that, and you saw 4 Filipino crew members were hurt.
Less than 3 weeks later, an almost identical incident took place, with even heavier damage done to the wooden vessel. On April 23rd, there was a terrifying near collision near the second Thomas Shoal caused by a CCG ship blocking a PCG vessel, the BRP Malapuskia. Interestingly, the incident was caught on camera since Malapuskia had a small group of journalists aboard for the 1,038-mile patrol, inviting journalists to come along as part of the new Philippine strategy to expose China's increasingly hostile actions in the South China Sea. However, public scrutiny didn't seem to deter China, as its Coast Guard carried out another water cannon attack against Philippine vessels a mere week later. This time, China's victims were the BRP Bagachay and a vessel owned by the Philippine Bureau of Fisheries. Although blasted by powerful water jets seeking to severely damage them, these vessels were ordered to stand down to avoid escalation, which is precisely what China wants. Simply put, the Philippines refuse to fall into the Chinese trap. However, this stance has seemingly only angered China and indeed escalated the conflict, leading to the most concerning incident to date, which took place on June 17th. At the time, there was a collision involving a Chinese vessel and Philippine supply ship on a routine mission to the second Thomas Shoal. The CCG vessel deliberately and continually rammed the supply ship in an effort to forcefully block it from carrying on its mission. The Chinese Coast Guard personnel even boarded this rigid-hulled ship, as well as another vessel accompanying it. Wielding axes and machetes, these individuals started trashing the equipment, as well as seized weapons and mobile phones from the—
Hold on. I didn't even know this. I thought that they only waved the axes around. I saw the pictures, but they boarded it and took their phones and Oh my gosh. Yo. Are you serious? This is like a level of— Oh my gosh. I have never been so angry. I'm about to crash out, bro. This is crazy.
Philippine personnel. It's reported that several Filipino Navy personnel were wounded in the incident, with one of them losing his thumb. This incident undoubtedly marked the culmination of tensions between China and the Philippines, to the point the two nations were forced to hold talks to defuse the situation.
Oh my
gosh. But although both sides agreed to de-escalate tensions, China's largest Coast Guard ship, nicknamed the Monster, was once again seen around the second Thomas Shoal, not even a day after the de-escalation talks. The Monster, a 12,000-ton mammoth of a ship, is also the world's largest Coast Guard vessel, and it's been continuously sailing into and through the Philippines' EEZ for months.
Oh my gosh,
It's clear that China is adamant about continuing to exert pressure on the Philippines in an effort to subdue the nation. This approach is part of China's broader strategy to kill the chicken to scare the monkey, described The Diplomat, an Asia-Pacific current affairs magazine, a decade ago. You see, kill the chicken to scare the monkey is an old Chinese proverb that refers to the strategy of taking small actions against a weaker opponent to intimidate larger and more powerful adversaries.
Not going to work.
In the context of China's strategy toward the Philippines, the larger, more powerful adversary is, of course, the US. However, the mere fact that China has been losing control and lashing out in the South China Sea suggests that this strategy isn't achieving its intended goal of deterrence and dominance.
Nope.
As things currently stand, not even the Philippines are scared of China. But how is this possible? After all, the situation was much different 10 years ago when the diplomat first outlined China's now unsuccessful strategy. Well, as it turns out, a lot of things can change in the span of 10 years, or in the case of the Philippines, even in the span of 2 years. You see, 2022 was when a new president of the Philippines was elected, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Former President Rodrigo Duterte, who led the country between 2016 and 22, was often slammed as a coward, trembling even in the shadow of China's President Xi Jinping. For this reason, Duterte willingly made numerous concessions to China, allegedly even entering into a gentleman's agreement with Xi to keep the status quo in the South China Sea. Duterte even referred to The Hague's official ruling as just a piece of paper, clearly demonstrating who his allegiances were with. It's no wonder, then, that Duterte was labeled as a traitor by many of his subjects who couldn't wait to see him out of office. And that's precisely what happened in 2022 when President Marcos took over with an overwhelming mandate of 31 million votes. Under Marcos's leadership, there was a noticeable shift in the Philippines' foreign policy toward China. Even in the early days of his presidency, Marcos didn't mince words when talking about China's actions in the South China Sea. His rhetoric only grew more powerful the more China grew brazen. In September 2023, speaking at the 43rd ASEAN Summit retreat, Marcos said that the Philippine people seek no conflict, but that it's their duty as citizens and as leaders to always rise to meet any challenge to their sovereignty, to their sovereign rights, and their maritime jurisdictions in the South China Sea.
Yeah, when you're getting bullied, especially when you are not even trying to be involved, like the fishermen were, this is just disrespect at that point. And I think it's beautiful that the Philippines is not standing down because it is trying to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. That whole idea would work, but not with Filipinos. And I think the reason being is they've already been through many revolutions. I've even been watching and been on the trend of Genero Luna, that whole trilogy. I forgot the name of the trilogy, but it's with Genero Luna, Goyo, Angelito. I just watched that. And all on my Vision Movies channel, I've been reacting to that and seeing the revolution and what they've done and things that have happened. They already are accustomed to this idea of trying to be pushed on and pressured on, but it ain't going to work. I think that's the beautiful part too. It's just not going to work anymore. And I find it really good that this is happening now. But to emphasize what I mean, what's really good that's happening now is the idea that they are not allowing that kind of push, that kind of aggression to just happen comfortably anymore. They're going to allow it. Yeah, you know what? We don't want no conflict, but there's no way we're going to just allow you to take over us or subdue us. It's not going to happen.
His defense secretary, Gilberto Teodoro Jr., even went further, labeling China as a bully in an interview with CNN the same month. His words painted quite a picture as he described how far China was truly going. It's not the question of stealing your lunch money, but it's really a question of stealing your lunch bag, your chair, and even your enrollment in school.
I mean, yeah.
But although this name and shame approach to dealing with China was groundbreaking in its own right, it soon became evident that it was just not enough. Neither were the many protests the Philippines vehemently filed over China's actions. As Marcos puts it, "We have filed over 100 protests. We have already made a similar number of démarches. We have to do more than just that." So the Philippines swapped words with actions. Toward the end of 2023, Marcos approved the 2024 national budget, allocating roughly $4 billion for defense, a massive 40% increase compared to 2023. However, this was just the beginning. In February 2024, Marcos approved a $35 billion military modernization plan, which will allow the Philippines to check all the items off its military procurement wish list over the next 10 years. The money will be primarily spent on strengthening the Philippine Navy, though the Air Force and the Army will also receive their fair share.
It's working.
Although not many details have been shared on the exact content of this wish list, the new Naval Inspector General of the Philippine Navy, Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad, gave a slight hint by saying, "Our ships or our capabilities, including those on land, should have the capability to fight in the air, on land, on surface, at sea, and subsurface undersea, and of course, in the electronic spectrum." When it comes to the military upgrades that are known, we must mention the M142 High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, the Light Multiple Rocket Launcher better known as HIMARS.
Insane.
This truck-mounted mobile rocket launcher, which can carry 6 missiles at a time, recently saw a massive spike in popularity after being successfully deployed in the war in Ukraine. For the Philippines, this system perfectly complements the SSM-700K Sea-Star ship-launched surface-to-surface cruise missile, enhancing its defense and strike capabilities. Of course, we can't talk about these capabilities without mentioning the BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles the Philippines acquired from India. This medium-range missile can be launched from submarines, ships, and fighter aircraft, and is hailed as the world's fastest supersonic cruise missile, traveling at a speed of Mach 2.8, almost 3 times the speed of sound. Naturally, given its speed, this missile is nearly impossible to intercept by either land or ship-based ballistic missile defense systems. Each BrahMos battery consists of 4 launchers, with 3 missiles with a 180-mile range. So far, the Philippines has acquired 4 of these batteries,
Oh my
the last
gosh.
delivered in April 2024. The first 3 were part of a historic $375 million deal signed between the Philippines and India in
Wow.
2022. In June 2022, the Philippines built the first base for these missiles, facing the South China Sea. The first base, located in western Luzon, positions these anti-ship cruise missiles to strike targets up to 185 miles away. Of course, the location of the base was expected, as it gave the Philippines a chance to expand its weapons range over the Scarborough Shoal. Now, this doesn't mean the Philippines will start firing BrahMos missiles at Chinese vessels sailing near the shoal. Far from it. But these missiles undoubtedly serve as a powerful deterrence during times of peace.
Yeah,
As for
defense.
wartime, their presence ensures that the Philippines has a formidable means of defense and retaliation, making any aggressive actions by China a much riskier proposition. Now, you might wonder, what can 4 BrahMos batteries possibly do against the mighty Chinese military? And that's a fair question. But let us remind you what a lifesaver a single, locally developed battery, the R360 Neptune, was for Ukraine. The R360 Neptune is, in fact, far inferior to BrahMos. It's much slower, less precise, and has a shorter range. And yet, it dealt a devastating blow to the Russian Black Sea Fleet in the early days of the invasion by sinking the 612-foot Moskva, the fleet's flagship
Oh my gosh.
and one of the largest surface warships in the entire Russian Navy. In other words, it doesn't take a whole host of missiles to make parts of the ocean too dangerous for any adversary. And if China decides to just bomb the BrahMos bases and eliminate the threat, well, it will have a hard time taking them all out at once. Remember, these launchers are mounted on trucks, so at any sign of danger, they can just flee the scene and relocate to a new position. These new military upgrades have certainly emboldened the Philippines, who grew tired of being pushed around by China. However, this newfound boldness undoubtedly has more to do with the re-establishment of close military ties with the US, one of the first moves Marcos made after winning the presidency.
They're also training them too with some U.S. Training and stuff. They have a lot of them coming over there and learning and or helping, which is really cool too, because the U.S. is obviously extremely powerful when it comes to this. And I think it sets a standard in terms of growth for the Philippines too, which is what I look at mainly, the growth that the Philippines will have, especially with military and all of the help and supplies that they're kind of gaining from this. It's really dope.
So instead of scaring the US and keeping it away by bullying the Philippines, China only managed to reinforce the military alliance between the two nations. In fact, as of 2024, the US has 9 military bases in the Philippines, with 4 of them added after Marcos became president. These bases include the Antonio Batista Air Base and Balabac Island in the province of Palawan, the Besa Air Base in the province of Pampanga, the Benito Ebuen Air Base in the province of Cebu, Fort Magsaysay in the province of Nueva Ecija, Lumbia Airport in the city of Cagayan de Oro, Camp Melchor de la Cruz in the municipality of Gamu Isabela, Lalo Airport in the municipality of Lalo, Cagayan, and the naval base Camilo Osayas in the municipality of Santa Ana, Cagayan. The 4 bases added in 2023 are closer to Taiwan, with one of them also facing the hotly disputed Spratly Islands, which allows the US to project power and maintain stability in the entire Indo-Pacific region. The US has also positioned its ground-based Typhoon mid-range missile system at a military base in Luzon. The US Army Pacific Command referred to this move as a historic first, as this was the first time the US deployed a mid-range missile launcher system in Asia since the Cold War. The Typhoon system is capable of firing SM-6 anti-aircraft missiles with a 150-mile range and Tomahawk land attack missiles with a 1,500-mile range.
That's actually insane.
However, this system is set to return to the US in September 2024, as it was primarily moved to the Philippines for another notable display of strength between the nations, the joint military exercises conducted by the US and the Philippines.
Yeah, it's been grown even stronger, the relationship with the US and the Philippines, and for good reason. Of course, you can see that the balance between them two makes it just incredibly efficient and more powerful. It's just really, really dope to see, especially in the defense of the Philippines.
The most notable among these is Balikatan, an annual military exercise designed to boost bilateral interoperability and cooperation between the allies. Balikatan is a Filipino word for shoulder to shoulder, which speaks volumes about the solidarity between the US and the Philippines. Balikatan 2024 took place in April and May at various locations throughout the country. Besides the US and the Philippines, Australia and France also sent their service members to train in the country, increasing their collective proficiency in maritime security, aviation and amphibious operations, and information and cyberspace warfare. Representatives of 14 other countries were also there in an observer capacity, underscoring the exercise's significance as a multinational effort to enhance regional security and cooperation. In terms of numbers, over 16,000 military personnel from the 4 participating countries took part in the series of exercises conducted over 19 days. Predictably, China slammed these exercises as deliberate provocations, but also showed signs of being quite alarmed about the ironclad alliance between the US and the Philippines.
Of course.
As it should be.
Recently,
US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reiterated the US's commitment to help the Philippines in the event of any armed attacks on Philippine armed forces, public vessels or aircraft, to include those of its Coast Guard anywhere in the South China Sea. Of course, Sullivan's words were a reference to the Mutual Defense Treaty between the US and the Philippines, which calls for immediate assistance in the event of an armed attack on the metropolitan territory of either of the parties, or the island territories under its jurisdiction in the Pacific, or on its armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft in the Pacific.
I literally was just explaining that there is a treaty between them too, as well as, they do have the option of whether they want to help a lot or not, but they do have to help regardless. But I think what's important is to realize how much they are helping. When they don't need to go to that length, they still are helping a lot, which shows you the strength between the two, and especially the growth in level of cooperation with each other now.
The US is also the only country with which the Philippines has a mutual defense treaty, highlighting the strength of its security partnership in the Pacific region. The US is also working on securing $2.5 billion in military aid over 5 fiscal years, starting with 2025. With all this in mind, it's easy to conclude that the US is undoubtedly the Philippines' biggest ally, and arguably the primary reason why China now fears the nation. However, the Philippines hasn't been putting all its eggs in one basket. Instead, it's pursued a wide range of alliances in the region. That's why the country has established defense alliances with South Korea, Japan, and Australia, and has sought to negotiate a code of conduct with Vietnam and Malaysia. In November 2023, the Philippines signed a new defense cooperation framework with Japan. The framework, known as the Official Security Assistance, aims to deepen security cooperation between the countries, with Japan promising to provide equipment and supplies as well as assistance for the development of infrastructures to the Philippines in view of strengthening its security capacities and improving its deterrence capabilities. As a start, Japan agreed to deliver 4 TPS P-14ME radars manufactured by Mitsubishi Electric Corporation to the Philippines, 2 of which have already reached their destination. Meanwhile, Australia recently announced it would spend $26 million on enhancing its maritime partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region. As part of this pledge, the country tapped the Philippines to conduct the first joint sea and air patrols in the South China Sea in November 2023. During the same month, the Philippines and South Korea agreed to enhance their mutual defense cooperation.
Oh my gosh,
this informal agreement came after the Philippine Air Force had already acquired 12 South Korean-made FA-50 fighter jets, while the Philippine Navy received its first 2 missile frigates. In the coming years, South Korea is expected to deliver 2 more corvettes and 6 offshore patrol vessels.
Crazy.
By now, we can safely conclude that the Philippines isn't playing around with its security. The new Philippines under Marcos's guidance has shown remarkable resistance, but also equally impressive restraint in dealing with the incessant threats from China. As Marcos himself puts it, the Philippines is not in the business to instigate wars. Our great ambition is to provide a peaceful and prosperous life for every Filipino. But is peace truly possible in the Indo-Pacific region? Will the Philippines' growing confidence deter China from making rash decisions, or will it only escalate tensions further? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.
Yeah, that was actually a really good video. I really like that.
How good you been living? Wait, how good you been living? I've been living too good for you. I've been living too. Did what I did and I do it again. Every move that I make, I ain't feeling repent. Nobody believes to believe it's a friend, and you question your moves like you really won't end.